Welcome back, everybody, to the
Welcome back.
Breakout podcast. We are on episode 5, episode 2 of the final 5 of our last run, unfortunately. But I'm your host, Ethan. I
I'm
don't know which way.
Akira.
And today we have a guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Brownrigg, Burlingame City Council member, former mayor.
Awesome. Thank you for coming today. We know it's probably not easy. You probably had to squeeze it into your schedule, but we really appreciate it. So thank you.
Not at all.
Akira, you want to start us off?
Sure. So let's start off with the question. How did you get into the world of local politics? Did you hear that? Sorry. I don't know if you were able to hear that.
It froze up a little bit. I'm sorry. Can you repeat?
Sorry. No,
Oh,
it's all
you're
right.
good.
My
First
bad.
question. How did you get into the world of local politics?
I appreciate the question. I've had a lifetime of being interested in public service. So I started my career as a U.S. diplomat, serving the country around the world in Syria and Hong Kong and Washington, D.C. So I've always loved public service. When we moved to Burlingame about a little over 20 years ago, I was working very hard, but I missed public service. So I applied for the Planning Commission. And I was selected and spent 8 years on Planning Commission, which, as you guys may or may not know, winds up being a pretty interesting route to elected politics because so much of local politics is about land use. What can get built? How does it get built? What does it look like? What kind of density? That sort of thing. So once you start engaging in planning decisions, you sort of understand what politics is all about. And I got interested in it, and then I ran for office in 2009.
Wow, awesome.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
what was it like being the mayor of a city? How would you describe that?
Well, so I've been mayor twice. We are a polite little city. We take turns being mayor. I sometimes joke that all you have to do to become mayor in Burlingame is to live long enough. And so what it means in our city, and there are a lot of smaller cities that do it this way. It's not until you get to bigger cities where they have directly elected mayors very often. I mean, it's a choice, but most small cities choose to do it in a take turns kind of way, although there are different ways of deciding whose turn it is. And so what you are able to do when you're mayor is two things, at least in our city. One, you help set the agenda. And so for me, it was important to work on a couple of projects. And so I was able as mayor to really make sure that those projects got put on the agenda, got discussed. We held public meetings. And so I was able to drive forward certain areas that I thought were important to work on. Now, it isn't, you still have to have the consensus of your colleagues. And if everyone thought it was a bad idea, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. But at least you're able to sort of put your finger on the scale of what's most important to work on. And then the other thing you are for the year is the city spokesman. So we have a policy that when citizens write to our city, the mayor is the one who responds. And that sets the tone for the city. And it's both, fun, and it's also a big weight for that year that you're the mayor, because you're really representing the city to the citizens.
I had a question about that. So would you say that the mayor is like on the same level sort of when it comes to duties as the other city council members?
Everyone's vote is equal on our city council and on every city council. So I'm just one of 5 votes, whether I'm the mayor, the vice mayor, or as I am right now, just a councilman. But as I say, when you are the mayor, you have the added responsibility, but also opportunity to help set the agenda, to make sure we're talking about the things that you think are important, to make sure that staff puts time into the projects that you think are important. It is interesting, and for me, it was a real wake up, because my training had been in Washington, D.C., and I have to say I have been a staff person, so I know what it's like to be staff. And in Washington, D.C., there's a great deal of deference that's paid to the elected officials. or the appointed officials. Like, what do you want to get done today, Ambassador Ethan? You want to negotiate a treaty? You want to pass an ordinance? What do you want to do? So staff is there to serve you. In this level of government, it's a little different. The city manager is really the CEO of the city, and she takes care of overseeing the priorities of the city and how things get worked on. And the electeds, the councilmen, are kind of like the board of directors. So we provide oversight. We can definitely push to focus on one area or another. But at the end of the day, it's the city manager who determines where staff time is going to be spent. And what you learn after a while is that if you don't have staff that are working on a certain subject, then it doesn't get done. So there's an interesting interplay that means I think the most effective legislators at the local level are good diplomats. They're good negotiators, because you can't just tell people to do things.
Mm. Yeah. How does
go ahead, Ethan. No. Ethan, go ahead. No, I just wanted to ask one question. So when you had the position of mayor, did you feel any pressure because of the choices you had to make?
I'm trying to reflect back on the 2 times that I've been mayor. I think the pressure is with hard decisions. And as a council person, you are responsible for making those hard decisions whenever they come up. And so, as I said, everyone's vote is equal. And at least in our form of government. Now, there are cities where are called the strong mayor form of government, where the mayor does have really more responsibility and more authority, and then they stay in the job longer. But at this level of government, it's, every vote is equal, and it's really your ability to persuade your colleagues about your point of view that helps you get things done. So, for example, when I first got elected in 2009, we were in the depths of the Great Recession. And, I think I'm one of the few, there aren't that many council people who have been through a recession. And now, of course, we're going through another one. So it's going to be a big learning experience for a lot of people who have just been used to budgets going up and to the right every year, And so some of the decisions we were making back then were really hard. I mean, we had to decide whether to close a branch library. We had to decide whether to outsource police to save money. And, and I got very involved in finding ways to protect both those things, protect our police, protect our library, and still protect our budget. So I don't think being mayor puts you in a harder position for those tough decisions. They're tough no matter what your title is.
Wow. Really good insight there. Thank you. You mentioned the city manager. I was wondering how, because you said not elected. So how would one become the city manager?
So, at all levels of government, and I want to just put a plug in for public service. I have spent a great deal of my life in public service, and I find it hugely gratifying to try to make my neighborhood, my community, my city, my country, my planet better. And public service is a great way to do that. So there's lots of public service jobs. You can go become a park ranger. You can go join the EPA. You can join NASA. That's all public service, right? Of different varieties. With respect to management, you can also go into managing cities. You can become a park and rec director. You can become the librarian. And then for those people who start at lower levels of city government, if they're ambitious and if they want to, they can work their way up the administrative ladder until finally they are city manager, just like you work your way up a business until you finally become CEO. And so, we had to replace our city manager. I think Ms. Goldman has been here for about 6 or 7 years. I was part of the hiring process that hired Lisa when our former city manager, Jim Nantel, retired. It's a big decision, I'll tell you. Any city council that has the obligation to replace a city manager, that's a big choice. And I think we made a great choice.
Yeah. Akira?
So let's move on.
Just
Staying on the topic.
Let me just add one little thing, just to put it in perspective. I think sometimes a lot of us don't really see city government, and we don't really see the city manager, and maybe even the title city manager seems kind of like, low level, like, oh, you're just a manager, right? But if you think about it, Lisa Goldman for the city of Burlingame runs a business that has over 200 employees, whose annual budget is over $100 million, and actually well over $100 million, and who has 30,000 customers, if you want to think about our residents that way. So she's running a big business, and that's why it's a big job, even if the title sometimes doesn't convey that.
Yeah, I definitely didn't know that.
I'd like to petition to change the title to CEO, city CEO. Maybe that will get people to respect it more.
It's a great idea, Ethan. But it comes with a pay raise, then I'm not for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, we can leave that part out. That works.
I'm just kidding.
I know, I get Akira.
All right, so we heard that you ran for state senate, so I just wanted to ask, how did you know you wanted to run for state senate in the beginning?
I agonized over the decision about whether to run. And what I learned in 2009 when I ran for council and I won is that it's not enough to think you're smart or you are, you have certain resources. You have to have a passion, and the passion has to come from perceiving there to be a problem that you both want to fix and then hopefully make an argument to voters that you are uniquely able to address. Like it has to not be about you, at least in my judgment. It has to be about the job and what needs doing. And so for me, I looked at the state of California, which is where I've grown up, and I love the state, and I see really significant challenges at lots of levels. I saw problems with affordability. I saw problems with pushing families out of our district. I saw problems with healthcare, saw problems with underfunded schools, and I saw big problems in the climate. And I did not see a legislature that I thought was working aggressively to solve these problems, because they take courage, and these are not small problems. If they were, they'd be fixed. So I ran because I felt that there was a really significant agenda. And then somewhat immodestly, I believed that I was uniquely qualified, given my background at both the federal level, the international level, and here at the state level, almost 20 years in local government, to bring new solutions and courage to Sacramento. And that's why I ran.
Yeah.
Wow. Ethan.
That's a good enough reason. What was the campaign trail like for a state senate?
It was hard. I was campaigning for about 15 months, realistically. I started in sort of the fall of 2018 for a March of 2020 primary. And I wasn't the first one in. I was the third person in. So there were two other people that had been campaigning for even longer. In one case, probably for a whole year longer. It's grueling. Here are the numbers. This district, which is most of San Mateo County except for Daly City, and then much of Santa Clara County, 6 cities in Santa Clara County. It's 1 million people. It's bigger than a congressional district. So it's bigger than Congresswoman Spears' district. Wow. It's bigger than a county. It's 1 million people. It's hard to reach 1 million people. And we took the view early on that that nobody, none of the candidates were very well known. And so for me, it was really important that I meet as many people as I could. So we set an agenda of having 100 house parties in these 20-something cities, 25 cities from one end of the district to the other. And we did it. We had over 110 house parties.
Wow.
Yeah. And I met thousands of voters face to face that way. And that felt really, really good. And it helped confirm for me that I was talking about the right issues, because it's what they wanted to talk about. But it was exhausting, right? That's exhausting. It's exhausting to go to all these interviews. I mean, I cannot tell you guys, I didn't even know ahead of time how many special interests there are, and they all want to interview you and decide whether the dentist should endorse you, or the doctors, or the electricians, or the environmentalists. I mean, on and on and on. There must have been 30 interviews like that, all of which were grueling. So it's a lot of work to try to get yourself known, and it's hard. It's hard. And then this race was, I think, complicated by the fact that we had this very noisy Democratic primary going on. So people, to the extent that, let's face it, not everyone wants to talk about politics. Mm-hmm. So those people who do want to talk about politics, they were talking about who should be the Democratic choice for president. And there wasn't a lot of time left over to think about who should be our state senator, right? Mm-hmm. So it was a noisy, sort of chaotic time to campaign. And it was grueling. Like I said, when I woke up on March 4th, I didn't realize until then just how tired I was.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that sounds like an incredible amount of effort. Felt like you said fall 2018, all this time, all the house
parties.
That is
a very long period.
And I mean,
and I wasn't first. I wasn't.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing. I mean, I imagine all your opponents did that as well, and I mean, someone has to win, and for all the people who tried so hard to, I mean, it's a tough game.
Yeah, I mean, I take pride in the fact that I won the endorsement of all of the local papers on the peninsula, mm-hmm. the Daily Journal, the Daily Post, the Mountain View Voice, Palo Alto Weekly, so the fact that I won the endorsement of newspapers who don't owe anybody anything and who just call it like they see it, mm-hmm. that meant a lot to me. And so I didn't win enough votes, and that's on me and on my campaign. But I did win support from a lot of people up and down the peninsula and from the newspapers. And that tells me that I had something important to say, and then it was right for me to get in the race, right? I mean, I think inevitably when you lose, whether you lose a sporting event or whatever, you wonder like, oh, should I have tried? And I'm absolutely convinced that I'm glad I tried and I did the right thing, giving voters this choice, even if enough of them didn't choose me.
Yeah. If I could be blunt for a second, I'm wondering, what do you think about your campaign, or maybe someone else's campaign, or the journals that led to that result? What do you think it was?
It is a question I think about, Ethan. Mm-hmm. I will say that for me, and this is more of a life philosophy than a political philosophy, I really try not to live with regret. I will just say to you guys as young people, like spending a lot of time worrying about what you might have done, what you wish you hadn't said to this person, what you wish you had done for that person. It's just not healthy. You can't change the past. You can just try to be better going forward, right? So I haven't looked back with a view of like, what did I do wrong, except in order to learn, right? If I can learn to run a better campaign in the future. So one thing, which actually Congresswoman Spears said to me afterwards, and I've had a lot of nice comments from very senior politicians about the race that we ran, that it was a clean race, which was important to me. Early on, I wrote up a clean campaign pledge for all the candidates to sign, which basically said, we will talk positively about our own backgrounds and priorities, but not negatively about others, because I don't think voters around here want to hear a bunch of dirt and innuendo,
Yeah.
So she called me, and it was very nice of her to offer her thoughts, and her thoughts were, look, it's hard to get known in a group of 1 million people, and having run, now a lot more people know me, and so if I run again, I'll start with the head start. And it occurred to me that 3 of the other candidates who all beat me had all run for big offices before. So, I think that's an observation I make. I will share with you that I didn't get a lot of special interest endorsements because I think I'm a sort of centrist Democrat who wants to make things better, but also wants to figure out how we're going to pay for it. And so in a big, messy race with lots of noise and voters who maybe are only paying attention in the last few weeks, I think not having special interest endorsements probably hurt, realistic. And so then, just to follow the train of thought, I have to ask myself, well, if I ran for something big again, would that be different? Would I be able to get special interest endorsements? I'm not sure, because I never, on these questionnaires they send you, which, by the way, should all be public. If there was one election reform I would make, is make every one of these questionnaires that are highly detailed from special interests, they should all be public documents. Because if you promise one special interest that no matter what, you won't cut this program, or you'll always do that, then I think everyone should know what you're saying. But anyway, yeah, so that's a good reform, but I'm not in a position to do anything about it. So I don't know whether, and so on those questionnaires, I never answered yes to every question. And I remember distinctly one group where I thought we had a very good interview, and I had a lot of touch points with this particular group's agenda, and I won't go into more detail, but I thought there was, and they called my campaign later and said, look, we love Mike. What a great guy, really interesting background. But he didn't answer yes to every one of our questions, and there are other candidates here who did. And so we're going to endorse, one of the other ones. And I don't know if that changes for me, right? I'm not really very good at BSing people. So I don't know.
I mean, that sucks. It sounds to me like you maintained your integrity, even in the face of, you could have had a sure victory, but is it really worth it so I would totally respect that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ethan. That's how I felt, and it's how I tend to run my business and my political life. And that's why when I tell people I'm going to do something in politics, they know I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it has benefits for me getting stuff done. I've been able to get some amazing stuff done in Burlingame. And let me rephrase that. I always say the things that we've gotten done in Burlingame, which I think are profound, it's definitely that we've gotten it done. Because like I said before, our council is 5 people. It's not an I thing, it's a we thing. But I feel I have been able to move this city along and focus on certain priorities that are, I thought, really important. I am so proud that we are going to create a whole new neighborhood in Burlingame to create more housing. We're going to increase our population by probably 20% over the next 5 to 10 years, which is profound. And I can tell you that if anyone had asked in Burlingame 10 years ago whether that was likely to happen, nobody would have said yes. So the ability to get things done, I think, in politics requires you to be able to keep your word and get stuff done. So I feel good about that part.
Awesome. All right, Akira.
Last question to wrap this all up. What does the future hold for you? So what do you see in a couple of years from now? What do you think are your goals?
Yeah, again, the question that I wrestle with myself. For one, I want to make sure there are 2 or 3 really important large projects in Burlingame that I want to make sure get over the goal line and get done. And they will make our city even better than it already is, and even stronger than it already is. Over the course of 15 months, I generated some ideas for the state of California that I think are really good ideas. So a second priority for me is seeing if I can find legislators to work with. I can't do it because I'm not in Sacramento, but to find people to work with who might be able to carry the water for me, not for me, but who might adopt some of these ideas on climate change, on affordable housing, on certain other issues, water being a third one. And see if I can get it done more like a staffer, right? Rather than being the elected, maybe I can be a staffer to somebody and help get some of these ideas done, because I passionately believe that if we're not at zero carbon energy by 2030, it's not my problem, it's your problem, and it's your children's problem. And that's not good. I'm not happy with that. Yeah. So I'm trying to see if I can move some of these ideas forward without being in Sacramento.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. All right, Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Not at all. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. How are you holding up through this whole thing?
We're doing pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Almost done with school. So we got next week is our last week, and then a few more podcast episodes, and
nice.
We're good.
Well, I'm going to give you guys a round of virtual applause.
So much.
And to you as well. Thank you. And you have our endorsement. You have the Breakout Podcast endorsement whenever you need it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Mike, I'm going to ask you, will you do a favor for me? We need a thumbnail for the YouTube video. So if we could just all make a pose or something real quick. Jacob, let me know when you're taking the photo. Is there any pose you can think of? A thumbs up or something?
Done.
Cool, you got it?
Yep.
All right, cool.
Perfect.
All right, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Hey, thanks
really
for helping. You guys are running a great ship there.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.
Have a good one.
Y'all.
See you again.
Right.
Take care.
Bye.